Hey, what's up everybody? BDF 44 coming at you another video. Alright, so today's the big day. Court. We acting like it's a good one. No. This is day of the process of trying to go forward with the case. Now, for me, it's one of those situations where it's two different things going on in regards to my mindset. One is just the overall uneasiness of the circumstance, given all that has come with it. It's really hard to embrace failure, and that's exactly what this feels like. Even though I've been able to accomplish a lot in this house, including on this channel, in the spaces I've been in, at the end of the day, bills need to be paid, and I did not pay them. However we got to this point, this is where we at. So, you know, there's a certain level of fear, like a great deal of worry, constant worry that is present. But with that worry has been a great deal of prayer. And so that's one of the type of mentalities, I guess you could say, you've walked into when you turn on this channel right now. It's just a guy who's been in meditative prayer for basically the last couple hours, more or less. And it's one of those situations where I feel good that this isn't one of those things where I'm coming to God only when I need him. That's what I guess I'm proud of in this moment, is because I can honestly say I've been praying every day, whether things were this serious or whether I perceived them to be fine, or when days were really good. It was always me trying to be intent on being close in those days so that I wouldn't feel like such a hypocrite when I'm in deep prayer today. And what came to me is that's not really how God looks at it. That's how our doubt tends to look at things, how we're trained to look at things from a perspective of human beings where there's balance to be found. There's never any balance with God. You'll never be able to give him what he can give you. And so it's like when there's no need for the give and take, like there is with us as humans, we don't have to consider how we'll come off if we come to. And that's what I've come to understand. You don't have to worry about that with God. He ain't sitting here saying you only come around when you want something. Humans do that because they need something. And so it's like God don't really need nothing from us. He just wants our lives to go the way that he dreams for it to go, as far as I can tell through the prayers that I've been praying. So there's been a certain level of truth that comes with just understanding that there were different options I had that I could have taken, but none of them came naturally to me, and none of them came to me in prayer. And what did come to me in prayer was to, as I've told you guys a million times, quit my job that I had and come home and wait for the manifestation of what it is that I've been working on to come about. And that has not manifested. And the embracing of whether or not I made a decision to listen to a voice that wasn't right has been in place. That confusion had been in place for a good portion of this time. But I think the overall understanding is that the Lord is still on schedule with what it is that he was trying to do for me, with me in this circumstance. And that is take a mind that I had, which hadn't accomplished anything in art, hadn't really accomplished as much as I was going to in terms of the channel with the Lakers particularly, hadn't made the playlist that I was gonna make, hadn't built myself to a place of health physically where I would be pleased with what I see in the mirror. All these different things were things that I were either curious about starting, or things that I just didn't have time to do because I was trying to work the security job, Santa Monica, that I was, miserable as I was, holding those shares, waiting for them to manifest so I'd never have to do that miserable thing again, and it never coming. But going high enough, just enough, to give me the guys that I had enough. You know what I mean? From there, the shares would stay at that price, and we would be upwards at least into the hundreds in terms of how much they would cost per share. So at that point, I figured, hey, I can afford to reset. I can afford to go home and just kind of develop a healing about some of these things that have not long been neglected internally. I never intended for things to go so bad while I was here. But I definitely had intentions of never going back out there to do what it is that I felt was deteriorating my desire to be alive. And as a result, I stayed home. I went through some things here in this house that helped. I went through some things here that were devastating, that really hurt. And now I've reached a space in my life where it's hard to see clearly as it pertains to what I'm doing in this apartment. When I first got here, the intention was to build this place up to be a place of comfort for me. But I knew I was in a neighborhood that I didn't want to kind of have some of my friends come and visit and all that, because I didn't, I wasn't from this area. So it wasn't like I was used to this type of environment. I was used to living in, Miracle Mile, Wilshire area. So it's like, it's a different vibe. And I didn't feel as comfortable doing the things that I felt doing over there. Jogging in the street, or on the sidewalk rather, and just walking down to the grocery store. I felt like being a black dude in this neighborhood, doing all that probably would get me shot or get me in a position to where I'd have to fight my way through the block. You know what I mean? Like, I really thought those thoughts when I first got here, and I let those thoughts kind of manifest into why I didn't move much. I wouldn't be walking down the street. I get in my car. I told myself I would never live here unless I had a car. It was a lot of stuff that was tied to this area being as it is, and me not being from over here and not having those agreements or those connections, to where I felt like I would just be kind of like in a space of unsafeness, if that's a way of putting it. I just felt like, I should probably stay in around here. And I think that manifested into something that it shouldn't have. That went to level 37 without even taking into account the neighborhood no more. It just turned into full-blown anxiety about leaving the house. And that's what happened here. And I don't think I've ever articulated that. It started from me just being a coward about walking a neighborhood block. Coming from a space where it was like really safe, I guess you could say, even though LA ain't never safe. But where I was at, it was like you could jog at 2 o'clock in the morning. The worst thing that could happen, someone might rob you. But at that time, it wasn't something that I was thinking about or worried about. As to where, I grew up understanding Inglewood, look, in certain parts of Inglewood, nah. And so for me, it was like, all right. But once I started living over here and started having experiences over here, that kind of changed a little bit, even though I always kept the idea that I shouldn't go out too much. The understanding that I can't walk down the street like I've developed the desire to not, that should have never developed. That was something that manifested into something that it was never actually intended to be. So for me, it's like when I reflect on why I've become someone who doesn't want to leave the house ever, it started with me just genuinely being fearful of walking down the street in this neighborhood without, having the presence of a pistol, or not having, homies in the area, something like that. It was nothing. So for me, it was like I'm alone on top of being alone. And so it's like, let me keep to myself. And it's like, for me, it's like when I find myself in this apartment, on the days where I do want sunlight, that for which was manifested when I first got here, still present. I've had times where I felt like maybe I should go down and get me a breakfast sandwich, and I said, nah. Or maybe I should go down and just kind of get something from the ATM, grab some, and I said, But then there were other times throughout the course of living here throughout 8 years where that was not a problem. It was never consistency about that. It was just always the notion that I should make it far and in between that I do. Make it far and in between that I keep going outside without my vehicle. Make it so that I never sit at that bus stop in this area, so that I never find myself in situations that may come about for being black in this neighborhood. Not that anybody's ever treated me poorly, because they haven't. I had maybe 2 confrontations living here in 8 years, none of which manifested in anything violent. And so the fear was weakness that I allowed myself to attach myself to, that really wasn't necessary for the reality I perceived I was involved in. But in the presence of that, I also said, you know what? Somewhere down the road, I ended up becoming a shareholder of AMC, and that for which was possible in regards to the squeeze, as well as that which was right in regards to our fight against the financial market, I allowed myself to let my car not be paid. I was like, I'll pay the car off another time. When the money is manifested, you know, I'll take the risk. And it was a risk that I took with the attachment to the Lord telling me to sit in this house that I thought went hand in hand with the idea that the money would eventually be there. Because he wouldn't tell me to be in the house and wait for the squeeze if the squeeze wasn't coming. So that type of mentality allowed me to make decisions that weren't good for the businesses that I was in business with. Because I was certain, hey, yo, I'm going to be able to pay all these people off at once. It ain't going to be an issue. I'll be in a good space. You know, that was the assumption that my desperation to get out of the life I was in allowed me to believe in. The desperation to be able to afford to move out of this neighborhood, the desperation to be able to quit that job and never have to work security again, the desperation to the isolation that I had become dependent on being something that I could get away with staying in, right? Hoping that I would have money on a day like this. So that, hey, somebody want to drag you to court for being in the house without paying them, just fork over the money. That was always what I wanted to do. That's what I was hopeful that the day would bring me. The opportunity to say, ma'am, I'm ready to give you what it is that you are due today. And because of what it is that I did in picking at the shares to live off them, you know what I mean? I picked off them to live off of them. And then, of course, the stock split that sent the thing from this point to where, you know, from a big point to where it is now, which is really, really low. On top of the fact that I barely have what I had left because I've been picking at it for 2 years, basically trying to survive so that I could stay in this isolation of comfort and not, you know, developing anxiety that made it even more, myself even more dependent on that isolation. And not getting any help because, quite honestly, for whatever reason, I really didn't see that as an absolute need. For whatever reason, I guess I felt that I was okay because even though I knew my mental health was taking a toll, I knew my anxieties were starting to hike, and especially when the car situation started to manifest. That's when I really started realizing my mental health was out of control. But I still didn't necessarily see that with the correlation for me needing to be proactive in getting help. It just did not correlate for some reason. And having gone through these mental health concerns over the years, times of isolation, I think for me, the correlation between there being an urgency to get help and me constantly falling into that cycle has never been present either. For whatever reason. It's like, yes, I have mental health concerns, but no, I don't believe that help is available to me. It may be available to others, but the correlation between me needing to be proactive in getting it versus it getting worse for me if I don't, I couldn't see that. I couldn't see it. And nobody was here to help me see it. And I think that's the difference between now and this era. I think last time going to the courtroom, I legitimately committed to getting help for myself. But when I realized how much it would cost to get there versus having to sit at that bus stop, for which I told myself I wasn't going to do, I realized that it was going to cost a bit more than I was ready to spend to get to the place that I needed for my mental health every day or every time they would need me to. Maybe one time psych eval would be cool, but that psych eval wasn't what I need. I need something else, I guess. I don't really know. I've never been through this process, but I'd imagine one day ain't going to solve this. And so for me, it's like, how can I get to a place that I can go to every day that won't cost me $25 to get there, $25 to get home, that can give me the help that I need, that won't allow me to want to stay in the home to no end. You know what I mean? It's like only getting worse from here. And that's the problem. Because I realize the fullness of needing the help that I need now and the correlation between these long periods of isolation, long periods that I've gone through many stints of, probably 6 or 7 stints in my lifetime of sitting in the house and just being stuck in my own head as it pertains to the parameters allowed for the freedom to move. I never allow myself to think of myself as someone who can just hop on a plane and go somewhere. I never look at myself as somebody who's just gonna, check into a hotel room. These aren't real to me. Like these things that people do regularly, they don't even enter the equation because of my absolute and utter attachment to being alone. And it doesn't bring me happiness when it's time for it to end. I'm fine so long as I'm left here. If I'm left here to be myself, I promise you, I won't find myself sad. I won't find myself needing anything. Just more weak in the sense that anytime anyone dares even threaten to take it from me, I'll feel even weaker inside. And see, that's what I'm tired of. Not just going without, not having decent clothes and even eating a decent meal because I'm afraid to walk down the street to get one. Or having, certain things available to me, by way of my money, because I don't earn money, because having to earn money means that I have to be in the presence of others to do so, or I have to break my cycle of peace and answer phones or whatever from a remote location as they do here, working from home, all these different things that would otherwise take me away from my overall rhythm of life that I just found myself married to the detriment of my very own future. And I sit here and I pray to God every day in hopes that he would just find it in himself to change my ways so that I could feel like a king walking down the street again, so I could not be afraid of dying. I told myself yesterday something in meditation. It's okay to die. You don't have to avoid everything that could possibly lead to your death. I needed to tell myself that. Because that's what it is. I stay in the house because I'm so very fearful of something that could lead to me either being dead or worse. Which I dare not speak of because it would affect others and I ain't welcoming nothing to nobody. But that's my fear. It's like I'm going to mess up. And it will have some type of lasting effect on either my own health or someone else's. And I think of mistakes that I made and anxiety, mistakes I made in ignorance. Times where I just didn't make it right, fell short, and I think about the times where I felt like not being thorough. One of the biggest fears I have is my neglect and my lack of detail, being detail oriented, and my just overall mistake making, whatever it be called, stupidity. I'm worried about that having lasting effects on others. I deeply worry about being a burden on people, which is why I can't even call people to help me. I reach out seldomly because I'm afraid of how I'm going to come off that I only reach out ever so seldom. I'm afraid to being asked where I've been and not really having nothing to show for it, but just fears and mental health concerns up until like 2 years ago, where now I have an art gallery to share. But that's not the point. It's about the overall synopsis of self, not just what I've been able to accomplish in the last 2 years. I'm 38. All of the things I've accomplished are new. The time I wasted was lasting. The time I spent in isolation doing nothing was what I got used to. And my selfishness, my self-centeredness, and the ability to just cut everybody off and to make it myself and all about me is something that comes so easy to me because I've done it all my life. There were times where I wanted to call my dad, but I felt like my DNA made it so that I don't talk, so I don't call. Like I was married to the idea that I was locked into the notion that I am a distant person and that I would otherwise not necessarily be welcome. It's like I could call my dad, but he'd probably be like, hey, you calling? What you want? Like, I didn't think that there was really anything to share based on the notion that we just don't talk. Like, even he would call my mom. He wouldn't necessarily talk to me. And I'll tell you the truth, it didn't bother me because I was wired for that. It's so strange because I feel like because of how I was wired, I never realized there were times where maybe I should have wanted a little more from others. Maybe I should have been willing to give a little more too, but I was too busy in a space where I was keeping to myself to ever even desire to do that. I think about friends of mine that I neglect now. People send me stuff on IG. I don't reach back out of anxiety. I got a buddy of mine that I love to death that I pray for every day. He reaches out to me every day. I don't say anything. Because of anxieties that are kind of linked to certain things that have to do with the same type of fears that I'm talking about in regards to walking out the house. I kid you not, I've never said this out loud. But it's the truth. I don't reach it back to my friend. And it's like, these are the things that have burdened me and backed me into deserving worse. And I think by way of these self-loathings, I've kind of pushed myself into positions to be needing, be in trouble, I guess. I think I've almost backed myself into these type of things where now people get to pull me out of my apartment. Now people get to take my car from my apartment. You know what I mean? Stuff like that as a means of punishing myself for being missing in the people's lives that I've been missing in. I really believe that had a part of it to do with it as I dig deeper into myself and wonder how I allow myself to be caught up in something that would allow me to be the last priority. AMC, taking every coin and putting it in there. No one told me to do that. That was not a requirement of the movement. In fact, it was shunned by everybody who talked about AMC. You do not pour every dollar into it because you will need to make a dollar out of something else. And you know what? To this very second, I have not over-leveraged myself because I'm so married to the idea of doing things the way that I was doing them that even in this very second, I could not bring myself to diversify out of that position. Now, granted, part of that is because all of the shares that I still hold now are shares that were initially purchased before things got murky. Shares that I promised I would never sell. I'm holding on to right now for dear life. Going without certain things, trying my very best. Because, of course, unemployment denied me. Y'all know about that. I ain't had an unemployment check since being out of work for 2 years. I've been living off of the money that my grandfather gave me a year ago, which is now completely gone, and the shares. And, I need the money to help myself. But the problem with asking my uncle for money right now is knowing that I had this court case coming up. What am I, ask them to give me some money and then turn around and then have this situation where they would be the only ones who could help me through that too? And say, well, I need money now, but I'm also need money for this. And maybe you're going to say no to both and I'm screwed. And it's like, how do I have that conversation with people that I don't hardly speak to, but when I need something? How do I let them know that that's not how I am, man? That my anxiety kept me from them, not my heart away from them. They ain't do nothing to make me feel that way. I made me that way. And that way is what I've been working on lately. Trying to be present in the Bible studies that my uncle has been sharing. I've been told for many years that the Bible studies would empower my life in positive ways. My mom was a part of those Bible studies before she passed. My grandmother as well before she passed. My friend Bronze was a part of those Bible studies without me. She's a friend to the family. I'm actually the grandson or what have you, but she was in there for a good 6 months every Sunday telling me how much she appreciated speaking to my family and how it empowered her life every week. I was too scared to get involved. It wasn't that I didn't want to do it necessarily. Part of me was just immature in a way. I wanted to do other things that weren't as productive. I had video games in mind and bullcrap and bad energy that I was engaging in. But as I started to struggle, I started to realize that, maybe it would be a good idea to start getting myself involved in those. And since doing so, I found so much more comfort in prayer. Yeah, I found prayer at all times, but the comfort comes from the community of others praying for you and having that word come to you that others are too, sharing with you the same word. They're sharing too the struggles, so to speak, of their own point of view, that the word is also relevant to their walk as well. So that community, I guess, is giving me a bit more comfort as I pray. So, I want people to know that getting closer to your family, if you have a good family, if you're blessed enough to have a praying family, it worked for me. Getting closer, it worked for me. And even though I am wrestling. They don't have to say it at all. I am wrestling with you only come around when you need something. I fight with that. They haven't brought that to me, but I promise you I fight with that to the point where it keeps me from them even still. Needing. I hate it. I promise you, I want to give to them. I promise you, if I had, my heart gives, not takes from my family. What I was trying to do in holding these shares was putting myself in a position to not only be able to give to the people that are here right now, but maybe be able to leave something to some people who are going to be here later on. To invest in my art so that I can blow it up to where it needs to be, so that I can start taking the emblem that I have made for myself and put it in positions to create jobs for others, maybe. I don't know. But I dream big from a space where conditioning has me thinking small and living small and putting minimal effort in and having no one help. And I'm so proud that I've been able to accomplish what I have in these spaces. But it shows that you can't accomplish much just the same when you do it by yourself. I'm living proof. I'm appreciative of all the support that I'm getting, but it would be so much more if I could just be a bit more social and a bit more encompassing of a team mentality and just more used to just people in my life every day. I don't have that, and it's weird that I'm comfortable this way, but it stumps my potential in this world so much. Not having people, just people, man. Like getting up in the morning this morning, I felt so thankful that the Lord had his arms around me, because all I really had was my fears. All I had was my fears and my anxiety and my comfort in not communicating, and the understanding, the torturous understanding of what that actually does for your circumstances and your reputation, and still not being able to audible out of it, despite telling myself I love myself. I live in this space every day in prayer and thanksgiving, because I know the Lord has given me a walk in this life that's struggle. Yeah, but it's not the worst struggle in the world. Because I know of people who are going through worse. I know of people who've suffered through worse. I know of people who are in disenfranchised positions who need me to think of them when I'm in my most, down moment. Because my most down moment is about 6 levels up from where they at, and they need me to reach down and grab their hand and tell them that they can get there. They can get to where I'm at and be more pleased with where they are than I am. Just like I can reach up to where you are and maybe reach to where you at too. The crab in the bucket mentality just begets more of the trauma that I was born into. More of the trauma that coerced me into a space of fear. It's what I'm trying to combat with compassion. What I'm trying to combat with the idea that certain cultures that we engage in don't mean us no good. What I try to combat by showing you guys that I'm trying to destroy my own ego, one selfish thought at a time being prayed away. I'm a selfish person to my core. I think of me first, and I've tried my very best in prayer to train myself to think of others more so. And in prayer, I've accomplished that. Now I've gotten much better at, Lord, can you help us? Would you please bring us together? Would you please make it so that that doesn't come naturally to me. I don't want people to think that comes naturally to me. What it is what I most respect. What it is what I think is most helpful in regards to helping not only yourself, but of course, everyone else. And that you should want to, because sometimes you just back yourself into corners where you affect other people with your actions. And maybe if you're a compassionate person like me, you're not pleased with that. Maybe your selfishness backs you into a place where you don't really like who you've become no more. And so for me, it's like, that's kind of what it did to me. That's what trauma, and then putting myself first in regards to protecting myself from trauma, ultimately did to my mindset. It made me feel as if I was a selfish, self-centered, self-serving, and in need of humbling type of person as it pertains to that selfishness. And so that's where the list came from. As I told you guys, I pray for the list and the bereaved, all the different people on the list, celebrities, friends, family. That's where that manifested from. Because, gosh, you guys, being selfish in the form of protecting yourself from fear is the worst type of conditioning. Because it'll back you into being a coward. It'll back you into being neglectful. It'll back you into being not loyal. It'll back you into being a snitch. All different types of stuff of self-preservation that don't bring you no honor. It's cowardice. And so what I'm telling you is I prayed for loyalty this morning, not loyalty coming my way. That's selfishness. That's not, God got that. It's about the loyalty I look to display to people and the ability to take care of my own home so that I'm not being a burden to those people that I want to be loyal to. These are just words right now because to be quite honest with you, I'm still in a mindset of great mental whatever the hell this is. It keeps me underneath my covers in the middle of the daytime when I need to be urgent about going out, getting a job, hustling, something. That's how urgent my situation is. But because I'm wired this way, legitimately wired this way, I turn on the camera and I'm talking about something else, man. And it's one of those situations where I long found myself confused by, like, why don't you have that hustle? Why don't you just fly the flight? You know, you got to eat to live, you got to eat to live. But it's like, the Lord wired me this way, man. I've been fighting with myself about how he wired me. And there are ways for me to be a better person within this wiring. But it doesn't come from me trying to reroute the wiring necessarily. It comes from me being more intent on getting closer to God so he can make it so that those wires function the way that he intended for them to. A lot of times we try to undo what comes naturally to us as if the world has it all under control, as if they know what the heck they're doing in regards to assessing us. The world has told me I am a person that doesn't want to work, that I'm a person that has mental health concerns, that I'm a person all kinds of stuff, when I actually am a human being that's leaning on God to cope with everything that he's going through, just like everybody else. And this is what it's brought me. I was born conditioned to be alone. I did not choose that. I was born conditioned to not necessarily trust. But I know that I can undo that. And it comes with applying that trust and being more so trustworthy, which is why I pray for loyalty, for the loyalty inside, for the confidence to go out on a limb and apply that faith. No different than I applied it to this AMC thing. I went out on a limb, I applied it. I did not know if it would work out. In fact, I was not in a position to really guarantee this made any sense for myself. And in the way it played out from a monetary standpoint, and given how I've had to live for the last 2 years, it's been hell. It ain't panned out. I've gone without more than I should have in a time where a man's supposed to be standing tall in the healthiest times of his life. A man should have a family, a wife, or whatever his choice of living would be. Those times in my life, I was going without because I was too afraid within my head to go out. And I was too dead set on fighting the good fight to splurge out. And even when it went all the way up, and when I say all the way up, guys, I was doing okay. For anybody's standards as it pertains to this level, I was in a good place. If for not a moment. And then corruption, of course, in regards to the stock market, ran our shares all the way from $72 to $3, where they are right now, or $4. And so my God has kept me disciplined when that thing was up there. I didn't take a single share to pay my bills, and that was not my best decision. But my dedication to what it was I was doing, that was something that I could be proud of. I saw it all the way through, whether it made any sense or not. It was the intestinal fortitude to do what was fearful in the face of, do what was difficult in the face of fear. And put God first in the process of it. And let the chips fall where it may. And they fell. Them chips fell all over the place. I developed all kinds of anxieties just from having my car taken 3 times and anticipating it being taken the second 2. It was damaging. But that was only because I didn't have the relationship with God that I found now. That's why it was damaging. Because I was engaging in, halfway out with my spirit. And the halfway out would allow the bad to come in, creep into my mind, and ultimately keep me from doing the stuff that would allow me to align. That's the difference from where I'm at now. Now it's like I've been so close to God. I made this mistake about 2 months ago to get away from the Lord when I knew better. And all the stuff that came with that was just tumbling down. It was hard. It was hectic. It was ridiculous. It was stressful. And then the Lord came through and showed me once again when them people didn't show up to court that day, that I'm still aligned with his timing, and that what he had in plan, what he had in store was still in the mix. And that's when I really stopped doubting him. When I realized that them people ain't show up, and I walked home that day with that phone and my camera happy, I knew that even if this day came around, which it likely would since the judge told me that I would be able to stay close to God, closer than I ever allowed myself to leading up to that court date, because I knew for a fact that the doubt that I was engaging in didn't serve me, because the truth on the other end of that provided me a relief that made it so that that doubt didn't hold any purpose but to deteriorate my mindset and distract me from what it is I was doing. It kept me from my workouts. It kept me from my therapy sessions. It kept me from praying as hard as I was. It kept me in spaces that I just should not have been in mentally. That's what getting away from God, coping with pain, breaking, so to speak, under that pain, breaking, so to speak, under that frustration and confusion and disconnect from my friend that I was dealing with at the same time. That just put me in a space where I had had enough and went to negative energy to cope, and found myself further away from the comfort that I found in prayer because I felt a disconnect once I did that. It's no different than doing anything counterproductive and then working hard to try to fix yourself. We always talk about eating well and correlation between your workouts. Now, you could eat bad, and go work out, and never see results. You know, you work out, eat bad, and just nothing. That's how it is when you allow yourself to engage in the wrong energy, but still asking for the Lord to help you understand what it is that he's doing in your life. Now, he's still going to do what he's doing, but your understanding of it and how you would deal with it and how you view it and how you behave throughout that process, it will be determined by your willingness to stay close. Because I'm telling you right now, I have to apply faith. It look bad. This is the type of stuff make people want to jump off of high buildings. When you think you're about to get something and then it turns out you got to go back to the world that you come from. Nah, people don't want to do that. Like, the strength to do that is something to discover. The strength to do that is something that people don't even think exists. People go out and rob people to keep from going through this. And so I always feel like the hardest thing to go through is the most rewarding. And I feel like I'm on a path that ain't going to lead to no destruction because I'm constantly fighting the enemy with this camera in my hand as I go through it. Every time I go through something, I'm trying to tell y'all something that I think will help you go through what you may go through in that vein. I don't want to just deal with this and then just go out in shame or just like, you know, jump off a roof and relieve myself to whatever the afterlife provides. If for some reason the Lord really genuinely wanted me to struggle like this so he could help some other people survive. It's like, bro, I don't want to go against your plan, because when we get to the end, I'm going to be like, well, dang, if I would have just known what you wanted me to do, and if I would have just had some truth with it so that the worry didn't take over, I'd have been able to see your path all the way through. You know how I apply faith. You see how I'm doing with AMC, God. When it's time to apply faith, I'm kamikaze, bro. All the way down. They about to evict my ass today. All the way down, bro. But I just ask God to help me understand the lead up, so that I'm not always anticipating the worst of pain, being distracted, not doing what it is that I need to do. I spent my whole childhood that way. And I've reached a place in my life where I'm working out, I'm doing all my art, I'm doing all this and that. And I know my conditioning is trash for the world around me. I should be working, I should be making money, whatever. It's all true. But the Lord has also told me to come home and become this artist. And I love doing it. I want it to continue. I want it to manifest into what it is supposed to. It's nothing making money now with God. Even if those pieces go for $3 a piece, I got a couple grand. Like, the Lord has given me works. I just need to learn how to manifest it. I need to be able to fix whatever it is, whether it be my mind, my conditioning, my childish nature, all three, nothing, I don't know. But I got works here represented to provide me the life I want, if it were to just be presented to the world in a way that they can digest and appreciate. Even if it don't do that well, it'll do enough for me. Even if it ain't wildly successful, it'll get me out of the dump I'm in. Even if it ain't the greatest art anyone's ever seen, it will provide me the monetary help to get the help I need. I really don't know what to do because I'm by myself. But in being by myself and not knowing what to do, I found Christ. I found a comfort that works in prayer and intent toward a God above me that's greater than me, and a compassion for his dreams upon his people and the creations he's created, and to develop a discipline to be cognizant of that as it pertains to praying for others and being unselfish in my nature. It's the selfishness within that tortures me and renders me in one spot all life long. It's the prayers that I pray for others that ultimately gives me the strength and the confidence and comfort to cope with the consequences of that. And that's where we are. I meant well, super well, for not only myself, but for many, many, many people, for many, many generations, when I tried to get myself involved in this situation with AMC. Or rather, not getting out of the situation once they took the buy button out, because y'all already know the story. But the point is, I stayed in and stayed committed. And y'all can still look at those videos because they're still back there from 3 years ago. I got in there committed to changing how we are handled as it pertains to our money in that stock market, how we are handled as it pertains to how we are treated in these various investment avenues, where money is duplicated to no end and only given to a few people, and taken from everybody who invests in it in the process, and any other thing that may have that money invested in it subsequently. I fear what happens truly more so in regards to letting this run rampant any further without fighting it than I do what happens to me today in that courtroom. I fear that more so. For one, it ain't like I'm facing 27 years. And for two, this is a real problem. And even though I'm not the sanest mind or the most balanced or most educated person, I can honestly tell you that I've learned what I needed to know that what I've done was necessary. And I tell you that every time I get a chance. And I want people to know that I still very much believe in what we're doing. I don't know how long it's going to take. I'm open-minded that it's going to happen, though. Because money is still owed, not just to me, but to the banks. Banks owe others. Others owe others. And it just really does become a situation where you're waiting on margin calls at this point. And so I just think people have agreed to let the apes suffer at the expense of the foundation of what's being done out of spite. I think they hate the fact that we have thought so highly of ourselves when we're supposed to just deteriorate into the times we're in, only to be workers for the plans of the future. We're not supposed to actually have a voice. We're supposed to be locked into the algorithms provided us and the rhythms of the technology provided us, given to us in increments, even though they know they got better stuff. The point is, that's how it's supposed to be, as according to the design, and we've betrayed that by just simply looking at what they've done and saying, nah, you're not going to get away with it. And then proceeding to attach ourselves collectively together to that thing that they've done, to not only raise awareness of it, but to stop it from being effective altogether. And the practice of what they're doing needs to be re-examined as well. Shorting companies and running them into the ground and not being taxed for it, so long as they're effective in destroying the company. What kind of evil is that? What kind of incentive is that to destroy? But if it holds a positive purpose, then of course it's not the worst thing in the world. But when you allow for people to take something that has a positive purpose and allow their ambition to make themselves undoubtedly infinitely wealthy with it, then obviously it's not doing what it's supposed to do anymore. Obviously the vacuum is now eating up the carpet. I want people to know that I'm not confused about what I'm involved in. Nor am I confused about the intentions of the people on the other end of this thing. Nor do I doubt that they know who I am by name. I've probably made some things specifically difficult for me for being so intent on holding the little shares that I am from within my enfranchised position, I guess it's the best word, and with this black skin. I really believe that. And I think they know exactly who I am, and I think they've been toying with my psychology for a little while now. But that could just be the sickness talking. I don't know. The point is, the truth is only available to me in the mind of the God I pray to. And so when he hints to me what he wants me to do and I'm obedient of it, what I try to find is ways of coping with the consequences that don't appear to be very favorable at the moment. And that's exactly what this is. I hope that through the words and through what it is that I'm saying here, I was able to help not only myself later when I watch and listen to this, but also someone else. Every time you turn on these channels, when I'm dealing with what I'm dealing with, I hope that I've been able to take my experience and turn it into something that you could take something positive from, or feel like you're not alone in your walk, or to be reminded that different levels of urgency provide different things for different people. When you hear me struggling about what I'm going through right here and handling it the way I am, you understand that not everybody handles things the same way. And you see yet another example of a different way to handle things. I am data. I am something that you could take forward and understand that it's an example of how people are. It's at times when they don't have anybody. Even though I have people that I love, I do. None of them in my life on a regular basis. And when you have a mentality or a conditioning level that makes it so that you want to be by yourself, it's never a problem. When you have a conditioning mindset that you are never safe and really safe, unless you're in control of your own environment and what you're doing, or by yourself, you're never really not being judged, or never really able to actually be yourself, unless you are absolutely perceiving yourself to be by yourself. I have lived that way for too long, and it's brought me a whole lot of pain, a lot of stress. I don't even think the word is pain, and I don't even think stress really describes it much. I think the best way to describe the word truly is worry. I worry so very much naturally. I spend a good deal of my life in worry. I don't know if fear describes it. It's a different kind of fear. It's a more specific fear. It's worry. And so I either try to protect myself from worry or just downright dealing with worry 24/7. And the prayers that I pray help me cope with worry. And so that's what I wanted to say. I wanted to describe that. I wanted to give people that, because pain and agony is a different feeling. It's not this. It's worry, man. It's constant worry. And so that's what I just want to be rid of, or embrace and turn into some much greater art than it is being displayed to be right now, as I am only so far into my walk in that way. But that's really the good thing that comes with this anxiety, is it really turns into some nice art. When I'm feeling like this and I just do some good, get over there with the markers and stuff, I end up with some cohesive pieces. So it's like, that's what it does. It's creative, but it also is torturous, man. And I just want to not have to strain with the understanding that worry is to come, whether it be worried about a countdown, as we talk about a lot. Every countdown is bad for my brain, unless it's something great coming, as to which it better come, because if it don't, I'm going to be even worse for that. Or just worrying about something that being isolated is ultimately going to coerce me in this environment. You ain't pay something, somebody's going to pull you out of something. You ain't pay something, somebody going to take something from it. You standing still trying to protect yourself? Nah, the world's going to close in on you and pull you out of that place. Like, these are the worries that a mind like mine has to try to weigh against the natural anxiety of my day. I'm tired of living this way, but I'm confident that I'm stronger than I've ever been, because I've gotten this far. I'm in this space. I'm not crying. I'm not pulling myself apart. I plan on being at court today. I'm not running from that. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. That's scary to me. I'm still there. I'm not running from it. I've been fearful of calling lawyers because I'd have to deal with the process of them telling me bad news or what would have to be done. I put that off. Put that off. We'll wait till we have to deal with what we have to deal with. Because worrying about it or having to address it before we have to deal with it by ourselves, I'm afraid I'm going to want to do something that I ain't got no business doing. I don't trust myself in that way. So I try to avoid certain things that I think will make me snap for fear of not wanting to preserve myself properly, or once again falling myself into a space where I'm not of good energy, so therefore become neglectful, and that could hurt some other, stuff that, or people or whatever. You just start thinking of yourself as less than for what it is you struggle with if you face it. So you better not face it to keep yourself okay. That's why I haven't addressed certain things. That's why I ain't left the house. That's why I don't call my uncle and say, hey, this is what's coming. All of that type of communication makes me face my fears that I ain't ready to face. And when I'm feeling like that, I start thinking, I can't think. That's the point. That's what it does. It makes me very distracted. I found myself thinking about my problems this morning. I had committed to shaving my head. I had gotten out the shower, committed to shaving my head, and was thinking about the details of what I was worried about, and put my shirt on. I know I had to shave my head. I had to put out all the stuff to shave my head, and I'm not going to shave with my shirt on because it's going to make my shirt wet. But I put the shirt on anyway. That type of distraction is what I am faced with when I try to think about problems that I ultimately run from. It's not that I'm able to face it at all. It's just that I start just going into a space where I can't think. All I can feel is worry. All I can feel is the pressure. All I can feel is the urgency and the choice to either face that urgency with all of my fears and my weaknesses, or walk away from that urgency and all that comes with that, which is something I desperately never want to be faced with, that crossroads. So I subsequently stay away from things that could probably take me in the right direction. It's a real condition. That's the screwed up part about it. I don't know what the hell it is, but it's a real condition. It's not like I'm just sitting here saying, yo, I don't want to work, man. Screw that. I want to sit in the house all day. That's it. No, hell no. I struggle with this all life long. BDF 44, I thank you all for watching. I'm out.